Welcome to the Math Dive in 5 for second grade unit on rounding. I'm Rebecca Orr and I'm the Math DRT.
And I'm Shannon Young. I'm a math coach.
So before we begin diving in, you're going to go ahead and begin with a task. When the task appears, you're going to pause the video, complete the task on your own or with a partner, and then when you're working on the task, think about how you would use different strategies or manipulatives or tools to solve the task. So here's the task. Go ahead and pause the video, and then we'll see you back when you're done. We're going to go ahead and get started by talking about the progression within the BEST standards. The first grade standards have students plotting, ordering, and comparing numbers to 100. They do the same in second grade, but now they're going up to 1,000. For this unit, we're going to be focusing on them rounding numbers.
Oh, that's interesting. I see first grade, they just plot, order, and compare numbers up to 100. And then in second grade, they do the same thing, but they go up to 1,000. And it looks like this is the first time that they're rounding whole numbers?
This is the first time that they'll be rounding whole numbers.
Oh, that means that my instruction is really important for that.
That's right. So take a look at third, fourth, and fifth grade. What we're doing now in second grade how's it going to matter for the next couple years that they have?
Well, it looks like I set the foundation in second grade for rounding. They just round to the nearest 10, and then when they get to third grade, they round to the nearest 10 or 100, and they go up to 1,000. And then in fourth grade, they go up to 10,000, and they round to 10, 100, or 1,000. And then in fifth grade, they do rounding with decimals.
Exactly. So there's a lot to come, and what you do in second grade is going to be such an important foundation for what they're going to be doing later.
I have a really fun rap that I'm going to teach my kids. I can't wait.
Okay, hold that thought. But before we move on, I do want to also share that there are some changes between the BEST standards and our previous math standards in first and second grade. So make sure you go and watch that BEST transition video as well.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you.
So one of the important things about rounding is going to be identifying benchmark tens. If the students don't understand the benchmark tens, they're going to have trouble rounding. So how would you go about doing this? You may think of a rap, but don't do that
That's
yet.
Pretty awesome.
I want you to think about how can you use base 10 blocks to identify benchmark tens.
I'm going to be honest. I've never used base 10 blocks with rounding before. I just always use like the rhymes and stuff.
Okay, so let's think about it. If I wanted you to round 42 to the nearest 10, I would have you start by building the number 42 with base 10 blocks. And we know that our second graders can do this. So then I would ask, how many tens do you have in your base 10 blocks? Which you would say?
I have 4 tens.
4 tens, and we know that that's 40. So that would be our beginning 10. And then I would say, okay, well, what would one more 10 be?
So if I was skip counting by tens, the next 10 would be 50.
Right, and you might even, or some of your students might even need to grab that extra 10 and put that there. And we would be able to say, okay, so 42 is in between 40 and 50. And once students have an idea of identifying those two tens and they understand the magnitude of the numbers that they're building, they can also start using a hundreds chart. So they can identify the number that they want to round and then go ahead and circle the numbers, the tens that are before and the tens that are after.
Okay, so I see so the base 10 blocks would help because I would just have to take away the 2 ones and then that would show that I'm closer to 40. But I would have to add 8 ones and that would be getting to 50. So that's how my kids would be able to tell if it's closer to 40 or 50.
Exactly.
And then on the hundreds chart, I'd only have to jump twice to get to 40, but I'd have to jump 8 times to get to 50.
Exactly.
So that's how they'd be able to tell.
And talking about the closeness of the number to those tens is exactly the kind of vocabulary and discussions you want to be having with your students. Let's take a look at number lines. These are going to be really important when teaching rounding with your students. So in these two examples, the number lines obviously have the same numbers and benchmark tens. One way that you can have them identify the closeness to the nearest 10 is by placing counters. one color counter can be towards one 10, and then you can use the other color counters to go towards the other 10. So you can easily see which one is the closer 10, right?
I like that. And that connects to back to the hundreds chart when we maybe did some jumps backwards or jumps forward to the lower 10 or the greater 10.
Exactly. And so then another way would be, once you remove those counters, the students can then start to draw little arrows and count the jumps that they're making to get to the next 10.
Can I use base 10 blocks too with the number line to help?
Yes. If you can see there's the base 10 blocks, they can build them and put them underneath the number line and have the same conversations like you mentioned earlier. Well, there's only 2 that I would have to take away to get to 40, or I would have to add a bunch more ones to get to 50.
I like that picture because it shows the students building the number 42, and then they have to build the lesser number and the greater number and then plot it on the number line. I really like that. I think that will be helpful for a lot of my students.
Definitely. That concrete is always going to be easiest when you think your students are starting to get confused.
Rounding is hard sometimes.
It is.
So can I just ask you a question?
Yeah.
What do I do if my kids are not able to identify the 2 10s at the numbers in between, like 42, if they didn't know that it was in between 40 and 50?
Yeah, so a lot of times we might jump to saying, well, what's the 10 that's before and the 10 that's after? And that can be confusing for them because they don't understand. They don't maybe recognize it on a number line as easily as we do in our minds. So always go back to that concrete. Have them build it with the base 10 blocks. And they can count how many 10s they have built. And then you ask them what's one more. Or if you were to add another 10, what would that be? So that they can use the actions and the blocks to identify those 10s.
Okay. I do think that the base 10 blocks on the number line are going to help with that.
Definitely making those connections.
Okay, I have another question too.
Okay.
I keep talking about my rounding song, and I want to know when that's going to be. When do I do that?
Okay, so rounding song, rounding rules, rounding raps. I know that they're really, really fun, and like people might come in and be like, oh, how cool, we're having such a fun time. But it can definitely confuse students. Like they may know it and it may sound like they know it, but if you talk about rounding down or rounding up in your song or rap, they might think that they have to change the value to a lesser value or to an even higher value, and that can get confusing. Also, they might think that if you tell them, okay, we start by underlining, then we circle, then we go up or we go down, they might forget what number to circle, what number to underline, and then it's all downhill from there. So instead of doing those things, if you have one of those posters, get rid of it. Instead of doing those things, we want you to have the students focus on number sense. Like the number 42, I don't care about the digit 4 or the digit 2. What does 42 as a whole number look like? Which going back to building those numbers with base 10 blocks. And then having them describe that it's closest to this 10 or closest to that 10, because that's the heart of what rounding and estimating really is.
All right, I understand. I'm not using the song. I'm focusing more on what the number looks like and how far away or how close it is to a 10.
Absolutely.
One more rounding question for you before I think I'm ready to start teaching.
Okay.
Sometimes my kids get confused when a number ends in 5, like 15. They never know when to go up or to go down.
Okay, so thinking about a number line, they'll see that the number line, the numbers that end in 5 are going to end right in the middle of the number line. So you always want to refer back to context. It's really easy when we're talking about context. So you'll see, like, this is an example, 85 miles. Am I going to go back to 80 miles where the gas station is, or am I going to go forward to 90 miles? If I'm driving in a car, I'm not going backwards. I'm going to go forwards. So if you make that context connection, then they'll usually remember, okay, if it's about halfway, I'm going to just go to the next one.
That makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's a good idea.
To wrap it all up, we know that we want our kids to get to that abstract where they just kind of think in their heads, well, 47 definitely rounds to 50 because it's closest. But remember that you're laying the foundation in second grade. It's the very beginning, the first time that they're learning about this. So we really want to stick with using those concrete models with the base 10 blocks, or even putting counters on a number line, and then moving to hundreds charts and jumping on a number line with numbers. Any other questions?
No, I think I'm ready to go get this unit started.
All right. Well, thank you guys for watching. See you next time.